Hello everyone, Dr. Polaris here. The bunyip is one of Australia's most famous cryptids. Originating in the folklore of the southeastern part of the continent before European colonisation, the bunyip was said to be a large, dangerous aquatic being that inhabited rivers, lakes and billabongs. It has no particular set appearance and has appeared in a variety of descriptions as an amorphous water monster. The creature came to the attention of Europeans during the early 19th century, and the term first appeared in print as Bunyip in an edition of the Sydney Gazette newspaper in 1812, where it was used to describe a large black animal like a seal, with a terrible voice which creates terror among the blacks. During the early settlement of Australia by Europeans, the notion became commonly held that the bunyip was an unknown animal that awaited discovery. After all, this was a land that was home to kangaroos, koalas, and the egg-laying duck-billed platypus, animals completely unlike anything found outside Australia. Accounts from later in the 1800s likened the creature to a dog-like amphibious animal, or, somewhat confusingly, described it as a calf-sized, shaggy-haired or maned quadruped, sometimes seen on land but otherwise amphibious. A rash of bunyip sightings occurred beginning in the 1840s and 50s, which spread across the regions of Australia settled by white colonists. The confusing array of descriptions put forward by supposed eyewitnesses were both so vague and diverse that in modern Australia today there is no set image of what a bunyip is supposed to look like. One of the oldest recorded stories referable to the bunyip may have been the discovery of large animal bones near the shores of Lake Bathurst in New South Wales. Although these were not described as belonging to a bunyip, the remains were said to belong to a large creature that resembled a hippo or manatee. Hamilton Hume, the man who claimed responsibility for the find, was offered payment if he could recover the specimen, but he never returned to the lake. A similar, but this time substantiated discovery took place in the Wellington Caves in 1830, where the fossilised bones of a large quadrupedal animal were discovered. The fossils were sent to British anatomist Sir Richard Owen, who found them to belong to two genera of previously unknown long-extinct marsupials, far larger than any alive in Australia at that time. Owen named the animals Nototherium and Diprotodon, while some Australian locals claimed that all the natives throughout these districts have a tradition of a very large animal having at one time existed in the large creeks and rivers, and by many it is still said that animals exist today. The word bunyip, as it is currently spelled, first appeared in a July edition article of the Geelong Observer, dated to 1845, which announced the discovery of another alleged bunyip find. The bones were stated to have been shown to local Aborigines, who identified them as belonging to a bunyip. The article went on to describe the find as follows. The bunyip, then, is represented as uniting the characteristics of a bird and of an alligator. It has a head resembling an emu with a long bill, at the extremity of which is a transverse projection on each side, with serrated edges like the bone of a stingray. Its body and legs partake of the nature of the alligator. The hind legs are remarkably thick and strong, and the forelegs are much longer, but still of great strength. The extremities are furnished with long claws, but the blacks say its usual method of killing prey is by hugging it to death. When in the water it swims like a frog, and when on shore it walks on its hind legs with its head erect, in which position it measures 12 to 13 feet long. This account was subsequently reprinted in newspapers across Australia, helping to spread this version of the bunyip far and wide in a relatively short time. A couple of years later, a bizarre skull was discovered on the banks of the Murrumbidgee River in New South Wales. Despite several experts identifying the mystery skull as belonging to a deformed calf or foal, it was placed in the Australian Museum in Sydney as a bunyip skull and drew huge crowds who flocked to see it. Another early written account is attributed to escaped convict William Buckley in his 1852 biography concerning his 30 years spent living with the Wathaurong people. His 1852 account records, "In Lake Modderwarry, as well as in most other islands, is a very extraordinary amphibious animal, which the natives call bunyip." Buckley's account suggests he saw such a creature on several occasions. He adds, "I could never see any part of it except the back, which appeared to be covered with feathers of a dusky grey colour. It seemed to be about the size of a full-grown calf. I could never learn from any of the natives that they had seen either the head or the tail." Buckley also claimed the creature was once common in the Barwon River, and cites an example he heard of an Aboriginal woman being killed by one. He emphasised the Bunyip was believed to have supernatural powers, with his Aboriginal allies warning Buckley never to approach the Bunyip, as the creature had the power to kill by just coming into contact with it. Several intriguing eyewitness accounts refer to furry, seal-like amphibious creatures, vaguely corresponding to the creature described in the Sydney Gazette. An 1821 account provides the beast with a thick, metre-long neck and dark hanging flaps, usually imagined to be shaggy ears on its head, while an 1872 description refers to a long-tailed, long-haired, glossy-coated water dog that had prominent ears. Despite many reported encounters, actual depictions of the Bunyip were rarely produced at the time. The Chalacum Bunyip, a geoglyphic image of a bunyip carved by Aborigines into the bank of the Fiery Creek near Ararat, Victoria, was first recorded by the Australasian newspaper in 1851. According to the report, the geoglyph had been produced after the creature had killed an Aboriginal boy many years ago. The boy's brother managed to kill the bunyip in revenge with his spear, and created an image of the animal by tracing its outline. The image in question depicts a large semi-aquatic animal with two flippers that resembles a seal when seen from one angle and vaguely looks like an emu when seen from the other. Although the glyph was originally fenced off, eventually local sheep farmers allowed their flocks to graze in the area, destroying the carving altogether. Along with the disappearance of the Chalacum Bunyip, scientific debunking of the mystery skull and the discovery of diprotodon fossils eventually led to the diminishing of the Bunyip as a frightening entity. The creature morphed into a figure of fun, and by the year 1900 had become a suitable character to star in children's books. In 1904, author Annie Rentoul published her fairy story Molly's Bunyip, a work that was a uniquely Australian children's fable, combining both European tales of fairies with elements of Aboriginal mythology. The Bunyip makes an appearance in the story as a friendly spirit of the bush that helps lost children find their way home. The accompanying illustration depicts the Bunyip as an ethereal, ghost-like being, a representation far removed from the malevolent water monster of Aboriginal folklore. Various other bunyips would appear in Australian children's literature during the 20th century, including the famous Bunyip of Barclay's Creek, first published in 1973. In this story, a lonely and pitiful Bunyip ponders his place in the world as he is rejected from both the human and animal worlds. The titular creature is a very sympathetic character, and we feel glad when he meets a female friend at the end of the story, proving that he is not as alone as he once thought. Again, though, the Bunyip here bears little resemblance to his Aboriginal forebear, or indeed the early sightings of the 19th century. A more frightening depiction of the beast appeared in the animated series Dot and the Kangaroo, in which the Bunyip appeared as an evil ghost-like being that probably scarred generations of Australian children. The name and legacy of the creature remains in popular use today, although often stripped of its fearful aspect. A number of places have been named after it, such as the town of Bunyip, Victoria, and the Bunyip River in the same state. The term has also entered the popular lexicon with the phrase Bunyip aristocracy, referring to Australians who attempt to appear aristocratic, or try to position themselves above others by relying on titles or social clout. However, with the expansion of the internet over the past 2 decades, the older Victorian conception of the Bunyip as a real undiscovered cryptid dwelling in the outback has been revived. Indeed, internet chat rooms and message boards have taken the place of the campfire as the location to share and disseminate stories of strange encounters with mystery creatures. Needless to say, there has been no verifiable evidence to support the existence of a large, unknown semi-aquatic animal that is present in the lakes and billabongs of Australia. There have been many attempts to explain the creature in a naturalistic sense over the years. With the discovery of diprotodon, it has been theorised that Aboriginal fear of the Bunyip may represent a cultural memory of a time when their ancestors lived alongside Pleistocene Australian megafauna. However, the earliest descriptions of the creature do not resemble any extinct animal native to the continent. Writing in 1933, Charles Fenner suggested that it was likely that the actual origin of the Bunyip myth lies in the fact that from time to time seals have made their way up the Murray and Darling rivers. He provided examples of seals found far inland, events that still occur to this day, and reminded readers that the smooth fur, prominent apricot eyes, and the bellowing cry are characteristic of seals, especially the southern elephant seals and leopard seals. In 2015, fur seals were spotted in the Murray River about 100 kilometres away from the sea, and it is certainly possible that a stranded leopard seal was the inspiration for the story behind the Chellicum Bunyip carving. These large predators, measuring over 10 feet long and weighing over 1,000 pounds, are very capable of killing humans and would certainly have left an impression on the Jabberung people, who lived far inland and away from the sea. An interesting side note here would be the unpublished dictionary of the Wathaurong language by a researcher named Lois Lane, or no connection to the Man of Steel. The Wathaurong were neighbours of the Jabberung Aborigines and lived in closer proximity to the ocean. The dictionary contained an entry titled Bunyip, which referred specifically to the leopard seal. It is therefore possible that the bunyip was a very real animal, one that was dangerous and unfamiliar to Aboriginals living further inland. The stories circulated in order to promote safety surrounding waterways and served a very practical purpose. In addition, the descriptions of the bunyip from close to the time of first contact between native people and British colonists strongly resemble a large seal, with slick dark fur, dog-like heads, and the ability to both swim and walk on land. It was only later in the 19th century that the bunyip stories spread across Australia, far from their origins in the regions surrounding the Murray and Darling rivers. At the time of colonial contact, the bunyip was not known outside Wathaurong or Jabberung countries, being a specific localised entity. As with the British big cat phenomenon, print media helped to quickly disseminate a national interest in the bunyip, with reports from white settlers quickly following these publicised encounters. By the turn of the 20th century, the bunyip had lost its specificity and had morphed into a very generalised unknown creature, more an inhabitant of fairy tales than a real animal. The indigenous stories concerning the cryptid were possibly inspired by encounters with large seals, in an inland context in which the animals would have been unfamiliar and posed a threat in the water. However, the convoluted history of the bunyip is more interesting in that its development mirrors the history of Australia itself, from the suppression of native Aboriginal people to a personification of fears and uncertainties of colonists in the land that was, to them, alien and bizarre. The gradual domestication of the bunyip into a storybook character also mirrors the expansion of scientific thought in the country, pushing away older ideas of the cryptid being a genuine, undiscovered animal. The expansion of the internet has revived interest in the bunyip as an undiscovered beastie, in yet another long twist in the tale. Who knows where the future may lead for this most Australian of monsters? Thanks for watching, everyone. Next episode will cover the stegosaurs, the famous armoured ornithischian dinosaurs. See you again soon. Cheerio.